Welcome back in. It's a big day today. Kentucky State Park celebrating 100 years. Governor Andy Beshear says last year 79 million travelers visited the Commonwealth's parks, 3 million more than Kentucky's previous best year.
WKYT's Jessica Umbro has more good news from the State Park Department, plus some sites that are in need for upgrades. It's our top story at 6.
They were planned, acquired, developed by people, remarkable people who had a vision and foresight, who knew the history of this state, and who were dedicated to the preservation of one of the most beautiful states in the Union. Would you agree with that?
It was here in 1924 at the old state capitol in downtown Frankfort, where state geological surveyor Dr. Willard Rouse Gilson delivered a historic speech to the General Assembly, encouraging the acquisition of land to preserve natural parks. Dr. Gilson's mission was born, and 100 years and 44 state parks later, that mission continues to grow.
Our mission at Kentucky State Parks is focused on creating memorable experiences.
Those memorable experiences at Kentucky State Parks include some bad times as well.
When disaster struck in the Commonwealth, when an F4 tornado took out 70% of my dad's hometown, it was the state park right next to it that opens its doors, that housed families that I knew, folks that had lost everything, their home just a pile of rubble.
However, the governor says tourism is booming, saying 2023 was the best year in tourism in the history of the Commonwealth.
Last year, tourism generated $13.8 billion in economic impact. It sustained 95,222 jobs.
But the state park system is in need of upgrades.
Wastewater treatment plants and electricity, and a lot of our parks, we own our own lines. So we've got to improve them.
In Frankfort, Jessica Umbro, WKYT.